Imagine standing on the banks of the Nile, the river's gentle waves whispering stories from a time long ago. The ancient Egyptians, with their awe-inspiring pyramids and mysterious temples, believed in a world filled with gods and goddesses. These divine beings were not just figures of legend, they were living presences in the lives of the people, guiding, protecting, and sometimes punishing them. But not all gods were honored equally. While names like Ra, Osiris, and Isis are famous today, there are others, shrouded in the mists of time, almost forgotten by history. The Egyptian pantheon is vast, with gods representing every aspect of life, from the sun that blazes in the sky to the fertile land that feeds the people. Each of these gods had their own stories, their own roles, and their own followers. Some gods were celebrated in grand festivals, their temples filled with offerings and prayers. Others, however, were worshipped in quiet corners, their names whispered by only a few. These lesser-known gods often served specific, yet vital, functions in Egyptian society. Their domains were sometimes humble, yet their influence was profound. Perhaps they watched over the harvest, ensuring that the crops would grow strong. Or maybe they protected mothers and children, guarding the most vulnerable moments of life. These gods were the silent protectors, the unseen hands that guided daily life, yet their stories have faded over time, overshadowed by their more famous counterparts. Why did some gods become so well known while others remained in the shadows? It wasn't always a matter of importance. Some gods were associated with specific regions or groups of people. A god might be revered in one village but almost unknown in the next. Others had roles that were so specialized that only certain individuals, like priests or healers, would call upon them. Over time, as Egypt's political landscape changed and new rulers rose to power, some gods were elevated to national prominence while others were pushed aside, their worship fading as the centuries passed. The ancient Egyptians were deeply spiritual people. Their world was filled with the divine, and they believed that every action, every event, was influenced by the gods. From the moment of birth to the final breath, the gods were there, watching and guiding. To them, life was a delicate balance, and the gods held the scales. These forgotten gods played their part in maintaining that balance, even if their names are not as familiar to us today. Imagine a small temple, hidden away from the grand structures of Thebes or Memphis. The air is thick with the scent of incense, and a priest, his voice low and reverent, offers a prayer to a god whose name is seldom spoken. This god doesn't command the sun to rise or the floods to come, but he is no less important. Perhaps he is the god of a nearby river, ensuring that the waters flow clear and clean, providing life to the people who live along its banks. Or maybe she is a goddess of childbirth, her gentle hands guiding new life into the world, protecting both mother and child from harm. These gods were woven into the fabric of everyday life. They were the guardians of the ordinary, the protectors of the unseen moments that made up the day-to-day existence of the ancient Egyptians. And though they may not have been as famous as Ra or Isis, their presence was felt in every corner of the land. In the stillness of night, when the world was quiet and the stars shone bright above the desert sands, the people would offer their prayers. They would speak the names of these gods, asking for protection, for guidance, for mercy. These were not grand ceremonies, there were no crowds, no elaborate rituals. Just a simple prayer, a heartfelt plea to a God who listened. The stories of these gods have not been lost completely. They live on in fragments, in the writings of ancient priests, in the carvings on temple walls, and the whispered tales passed down through generations. They are the hidden gems of Egyptian mythology, waiting to be remembered. Their stories are filled with emotion, with the hopes and fears of the people who worshipped them. They speak of a world where every stone, every tree, every river was alive with the divine. As we look back across the millennia, we can still feel their presence. The gods of Egypt are not just relics of the past, they are timeless, eternal, their stories echoing through the ages. And though some of their names may have been forgotten, their influence remains. The ancient Egyptians knew that these gods were always with them in every moment of their lives. They understood that the divine was not just in the grand and the glorious, but also in the quiet, the humble, the everyday. The gods of Egypt that almost nobody knows are like the forgotten notes of a beautiful melody, soft yet vital to the harmony. They remind us that every story has its heroes, and every hero, no matter how small, has a story worth telling. In the land of Egypt, where the sands shift and the winds whisper, the stories of these gods are waiting to be heard once more. In the heart of ancient Egypt, where the Nile's waters brought life to the land, there was a goddess who held a special place in the hearts of the people. Her name was Hecate, and she was unlike any other goddess. Hecate was the goddess of birth and fertility, and she took the form of a frog, a creature that, even today, brings to mind the promise of new life and renewal. In a time when life was fragile and uncertain, the ancient Egyptians turned to Hecate for protection and guidance. Her presence was felt in the quiet moments before a child's first cry, in the anxious prayers of a mother as she brought new life into the world. Hecate was there, a silent guardian, her eyes watching over every birth, her spirit infusing each breath with hope. The frog, her sacred symbol, was not chosen by chance. In the fertile lands of the Nile, frogs were a common sight, appearing as if by magic when the river flooded and the earth sprang to life. To the Egyptians, these small creatures were a sign that the gods had blessed the land, that the cycle of life would continue, and that Hecate was near. The frog was a symbol of transformation, of life emerging from the water, just as a child emerges from the womb. In this way, Hecate was not just a goddess of birth, but of all the transitions of life. She was there at the beginning, guiding the souls of the unborn into the world, and she remained close, watching over the first breath, the first heartbeat, the first cry. In the ancient temples dedicated to Hecate, the walls were adorned with images of her frog form, surrounded by symbols of life and fertility. Mothers-to-be would visit these temples, seeking her blessings for a safe delivery, offering gifts of grain and flowers, whispering prayers for her protection. The priests of Hecate, wise and gentle, would perform rituals to honor the goddess, asking her to be present in the birthing rooms, to lend her strength and calm to the laboring women. Hecate was not a distant goddess, not one who demanded grand sacrifices or extravagant offerings. She was a mother's goddess, a goddess of the hearth and home, of the small, yet immeasurable moments that make up a life. Her power was in her presence, and the comfort she brought to those in need, and the quiet assurance that she was always near, always watching, always ready to help. To the women of ancient Egypt, Hecate was a source of strength and comfort. In a world where childbirth was fraught with danger, where the line between life and death was thin, Hecate was a beacon of hope. Her name was spoken in moments of joy and fear, in the hushed tones of a mother's prayer, in the cries of a newborn child. She was the goddess of life itself, and her touch was felt in every corner of the land. The rituals associated with Hecate were simple, yet powerful. Expectant mothers would wear amulets in the shape of frogs, believing that these charms would bring Hecate's protection. Midwives, too, would invoke her name, calling upon her to guide their hands, to ease the pain of labor, to ensure the safe arrival of the new life. These rituals were not just acts of faith, they were acts of love, of a deep connection between the people and the divine, a connection that was as real and as vital as the breath in their lungs. Hecate's influence extended beyond the birthing room. She was also a goddess of fertility, of the land and the people. Her blessings were sought by those who wished for children, by those who prayed for a bountiful harvest, by those who needed the earth to bring forth its gifts. The fields, green and lush after the Nile's floods, were seen as a testament to Hecate's power, a sign that she had blessed the land, that she had breathed life into the soil. In the stories passed down through generations, Hecate was often depicted as a nurturing figure, one who cared for all living things. Her frog form, with its wide eyes and gentle demeanor, was a reminder that life is precious, that every living thing, no matter how small, is a gift from the gods. She was a goddess who understood the struggles of life, who knew the pain and joy of birth, who stood by those who needed her most. Even in the darkest times, when the land was dry and the crops failed, when the cries of hungry children filled the air, the people held on to their faith in Hecate. They believed that she would bring life back to the land, that her frogs would appear once more, heralding the return of the floods, the renewal of the earth. And when the rains came, when the Nile swelled and the frogs sang in the night, the people knew that Hecate had not forgotten them, that she had answered their prayers. Hecate's story is one of compassion and care, of a goddess who walked among the people, who touched their lives in ways both small and profound. She was not just a symbol of birth, but of life itself, of the constant renewal and transformation that is at the heart of existence. Her presence was a comfort, her touch a blessing, her name a prayer on the lips of those who loved her. The memory of Hecate, the frog goddess, lives on in the stories of those who believed in her, and the symbols that still speak of life and fertility, and the quiet moments when new life begins. She is a reminder that even in the midst of uncertainty, there is hope, that even in the face of fear, there is strength, and that in every breath and every heartbeat, there is the presence of the divine. When the sun sets over the ancient sands of Egypt and the world is bathed in the cool, silver light of the moon, there is a presence that can be felt, gentle yet powerful. This is Khonsu, the lunar god who moves silently across the night sky, his face reflecting the soft glow of the moon. He is a guardian in the darkness, a healer whose light soothes the suffering and wards off the shadows that threaten to consume the soul. Khonsu's story begins with the moon, that ever-changing companion of the night. To the ancient Egyptians, the moon was more than just a celestial body, it was a symbol of time, of cycles, of life itself. And Khonsu was the embodiment of the moon's power. As the moon waxed and waned, so too did Khonsu's strength, his influence ebbing and flowing with the phases of the moon. Yet, whether the moon was full or just a sliver in the sky, Khonsu was always watching, always guiding, always protecting. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world is asleep and the veil between the seen and unseen grows thin, Khonsu's power is at its peak. He is not just a god of the moon, he is a healer, a protector, a force against the evil spirits that lurk in the shadows. The ancient Egyptians believed that Khonsu had the power to drive away these malevolent forces, to banish the darkness that sought to harm the living. His light was a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a light to guide the way. Khonsu's role as a healer was deeply revered. In temples dedicated to him, priests would invoke his name, asking for his blessings to heal the sick, to mend the broken, to restore what had been lost. The moonlight was seen as a purifying force, one that could cleanse wounds, ease pain, and bring peace to troubled minds. People would pray to Khonsu for protection during the night, believing that his light could keep them safe from harm, that his presence could calm their fears and grant them restful sleep. But Khonsu was more than just a solitary god. He was a vital part of the Theban triad, a family of gods worshipped in the great city of Thebes. Alongside Ammonius, the powerful king of the gods, and Mut, the motherly goddess, Khonsu formed a divine family that watched over the people of Egypt. In this triad, Khonsu was the son, the young god whose energy and vitality brought balance to the wisdom of Ammonius and the nurturing care of Mut. In the great temples of Thebes, Khonsu was honored with rituals that celebrated his connection to the moon and his role as a healer. The people would offer him gifts of food, drink, and precious objects, hoping to gain his favor and receive his blessings. The priests would chant his praises, their voices rising in the stillness of the night, calling upon Khonsu to protect the city, to heal the sick, to drive away the evil that threatened their lives. Khonsu's influence was not confined to the city of Thebes. His name was known across the land of Egypt, and his power was felt wherever the moon shone. Travelers would look up to the night sky, seeing the moon as a sign that Khonsu was watching over them, guiding them on their journey. Mothers would whisper his name to protect their children from nightmares, believing that Khonsu's light could chase away the fears that haunted the dark. The story of Khonsu is one of quiet strength, of a god who worked in the shadows, yet whose presence was always felt. He was not a god of thunder or fire, not one who demanded attention with grand displays of power. Instead, Khonsu was the gentle light that eased the fears of the night, the healer who mended the broken, the protector who stood between the living and the spirits that sought to do them harm. In the ancient texts and carvings that tell his story, Khonsu is often depicted as a young man with the sidelock of youth, a symbol of his energy and vitality. He wears the lunar disk and crescent moon on his head, a sign of his connection to the moon and its cycles. His face is serene, his expression calm, a reflection of the peace he brings to those who call upon him. The people of ancient Egypt knew that Khonsu was always there, even when the moon was hidden from sight, even when the night seemed darkest. His light was a promise, a reassurance that they were never truly alone. And when the moon rose once more, casting its silver light over the land, they knew that Khonsu was watching, his presence a comfort in the night. Khonsu's story is a reminder of the power of the quiet, the unseen, the gentle forces that work behind the scenes to protect, to heal, to guide. He is the light in the darkness, the healer who mends what is broken, the protector who stands guard in the night. In a world where so much is uncertain, Khonsu's light is a constant, a beacon of hope and peace that shines across the ages. In the vast and ancient land of Egypt, where the sun blazed high and the sand stretched endlessly, there was a goddess whose presence was both feared and revered. Her name was Serket, and she was the scorpion goddess, a protector, a healer, and a guide for those who ventured into the unknown. Serket was not like other goddesses. She held a power that was as mysterious as it was profound, a power that came from the very creatures that most feared, the deadly scorpions that roamed the desert. Serket's origins were deeply rooted in the harsh, unforgiving landscape of Egypt. The scorpion, her sacred symbol, was a creature of both danger and protection. It could strike fear with its venomous sting, yet it was also a guardian, a creature that fiercely protected its young. Serket embodied this duality. She was a goddess who could both harm and heal, who could bring death or offer life. The ancient Egyptians understood this and knew that Serket's power was not to be taken lightly. In life, Serket was a protector of the living, a goddess who watched over those who traveled through the desert, where the threat of scorpions was ever present. Her image was often worn as an amulet, a small token of her protection that could be carried close to the heart. People believed that by invoking Serket's name, they could ward off the deadly sting of scorpions and other poisonous creatures. Her presence was a shield, a comfort in a land where danger was never far away. But it was in death that Serket's true power was revealed. She was more than just a protector of the living, she was a guide for the dead, a goddess who helped souls navigate the treacherous journey through the afterlife. In the world of the dead, where spirits faced countless dangers and trials, Serket was there, her fierce gaze watching over the souls who had passed into the next world. She was one of the four goddesses who guarded the canopic jars, the sacred vessels that held the organs of the deceased, ensuring that they would be protected as they made their way to the afterlife. Serket's role in the afterlife was crucial. She was believed to have the power to control and neutralize the venom of poisonous creatures, and in this way, she protected the dead from the dangers they might face. Her presence was both a comfort and a warning, a reminder that while she could protect, she could also destroy. The ancient Egyptians knew that to cross into the afterlife was to enter a world where the stakes were high, where the wrong step could mean eternal suffering. But with Serket by their side, they could face the trials ahead with courage and hope. In the world of Egyptian medicine and magic, Serket's influence was deeply felt. She was invoked in spells and rituals designed to cure poison, to heal the sick, and to protect against the dark forces that threatened the well-being of the people. Her power was in her knowledge of both life and death, of the fine line between the two, and of how to navigate that line with wisdom and care. Healers would call upon Serket when treating those who had been bitten or stung, believing that her presence could draw out the venom, could turn death away from the door. Serket's magic was not just in her ability to heal, but in her ability to protect. She was a guardian of boundaries, of the spaces between life and death, between safety and danger. In this way, she was a goddess of transitions, of the moments when life hung in the balance, when the outcome was uncertain. Her scorpion form, with its lethal sting, was a reminder of the fragility of life, of how quickly it could be taken away. Yet it was also a symbol of resilience, of the strength that could be found even in the most dangerous of creatures. The people of ancient Egypt respected and honored Serket for this strength. They knew that to invoke her was to invite both her protection and her judgment, to acknowledge that she held the power to decide who would live and who would die. In this way, Serket was not just a goddess to be worshipped, but a force to be reckoned with, a presence that could not be ignored. Even in the most mundane aspects of life, Serket's influence was felt. When a child was born, prayers were said to Serket to protect the infant from harm. When a family member fell ill, offerings were made to her, asking for her healing touch. And when death came, as it inevitably did, Serket was called upon to guide the soul safely to the afterlife, to stand as a sentinel at the gates of eternity. Serket's power was not just in her ability to protect, but in the fear and respect she commanded. She was a reminder that life was precious, that it could be taken away in an instant, but also that it could be protected, that there was hope even in the face of danger. Her scorpion form, with its sharp claws and deadly sting, was a symbol of the balance that must be maintained, of the care that must be taken to navigate the dangers of life and death. In the end, Serket's story is one of strength, of resilience, of the power that comes from understanding the dangers that surround us and knowing how to protect against them. She is a goddess who embodies the duality of life, who understands that with great power comes great responsibility, and who uses that power to protect and guide those who need her most. Serket is a guardian, a healer, a protector of the living and the dead, a goddess whose presence is felt in every breath, and every heartbeat, and every moment of life. In the ancient land of Egypt, where the pyramids touched the sky and the Nile's waters whispered secrets, there was a goddess who quietly held the universe of knowledge within her grasp. Her name was Seshet, and she was the keeper of wisdom, the mistress of writing, the architect of the heavens and the earth. Seshet's presence was felt in the quiet moments, in the delicate scratch of a reed pen on papyrus, and the careful measurement of stones that would become grand temples. She was the goddess who saw all, who recorded all, who ensured that knowledge was preserved, not just for the living, but for eternity. Seshet's connection to writing and knowledge was sacred, for in Egypt, to write was to give life to ideas, to make the invisible visible. The ancient Egyptians believed that writing was a divine gift, a way to communicate with the gods, to capture the essence of the world, and to ensure that nothing was forgotten. And at the heart of this sacred art was Seshet, the goddess who guided the hands of scribes, who whispered wisdom into their ears, who kept the records of both gods and men. Her symbols were the tools of her trade, a palm branch, notched to mark the passing of years, a stylus for writing, and a star, the symbol of the divine order she helped maintain. These were not just symbols, they were extensions of Seshet herself, representations of her role as the guardian of knowledge and time. With every word written, with every measurement taken, Seshet's presence was there, guiding, shaping, preserving. But Seshet's influence went beyond the written word. She was also the goddess of architecture, the one who measured the earth and the sky, who ensured that every building, every structure, was aligned with the cosmos. The ancient Egyptians believed that the harmony of their world depended on the precise alignment of their temples, their cities, their homes, and it was Seshet who provided the divine measurements that ensured this harmony. She was the one who stretched the cord, who laid the foundation, who made sure that the human world reflected the order of the divine. In this way, Seshet was not just a goddess of knowledge, but a creator, a builder, a weaver of the fabric of reality. She was there in the planning of every pyramid, in the design of every temple, in the carving of every stone. Her knowledge was not abstract, it was tangible, it was real, it was the very foundation upon which the world was built. The people of Egypt understood that without Seshet, there could be no order, no balance, no beauty in the world. She was the invisible hand that guided their civilization, that ensured its continuity, that made sure that the wisdom of the past was passed down to future generations. Yet, Seshet was not alone in her divine work. She shared a deep connection with Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, the divine scribe who recorded the words of the gods and the deeds of men. Thoth was often depicted as her companion, her counterpart, her equal in the sacred task of preserving knowledge. Together, they formed a divine partnership, one that ensured that wisdom flowed from the heavens to the earth, that nothing was forgotten, that everything was recorded. The relationship between Seshet and Thoth was one of balance, of harmony. While Thoth was often seen as the more prominent god, the one who brought the gift of writing to humanity, Seshet was the one who ensured that this gift was used wisely, that it was preserved, that it was measured and kept in its proper place. She was the quieter of the two, the one who worked behind the scenes, who ensured that the records were accurate, that the measurements were correct, that the knowledge was complete. In the temples of Egypt, Seshet was honored alongside Thoth, her presence a reminder that wisdom and knowledge were not just the domain of the gods, but a sacred trust given to humanity. The priests who served in these temples knew that to invoke Seshet was to ask for her guidance, her precision, her insight. They understood that without Seshet's influence, their work would be incomplete, their knowledge imperfect, their connection to the divine severed. Seshet's influence extended beyond the temples, beyond the scribes, beyond the architects. She was present in every aspect of Egyptian life, in every decision made, in every word spoken, in every action taken. The people knew that to live in accordance with Seshet's wisdom was to live a life of order, of balance, of harmony. They knew that she watched over them, that she recorded their deeds, that she measured their lives against the divine order. In the quiet moments of reflection, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the people of Egypt would look up and feel Seshet's presence. They would see her star, her symbol of divine order, and they would know that she was there, watching over them, guiding them, ensuring that their lives were in balance with the cosmos. Seshet's story is one of quiet strength, of wisdom that is both practical and divine. She is the goddess who measures, who records, who ensures that the world remains in harmony with the heavens. Her influence is felt in every word written, in every stone laid, in every life lived. She is the silent architect of the universe, the keeper of knowledge, the one who ensures that nothing is forgotten, that everything is remembered, that the wisdom of the past lives on in the present and the future. Through Seshet, the people of ancient Egypt found a connection to the divine that was both profound and practical. They understood that to honor Seshet was to honor the very foundation of their civilization, to recognize the importance of knowledge, of wisdom, of order. And in doing so, they ensured that their legacy would endure, that their knowledge would be preserved, that their world would remain in harmony with the cosmos. In the vast expanse of the Egyptian sky, where the stars shimmered like jewels and the sun's journey was a daily miracle, there was a goddess whose presence was as nurturing as it was majestic. Miheweret, the celestial cow, carried the weight of the heavens on her back, her gentle form cradling the sun as it traveled across the sky. She was a mother to the universe, a being of infinite grace and strength, whose story intertwined with the very creation of the world. In the ancient myths of Egypt, Miheweret was not just a symbol but a living force, embodying the sky itself. Her immense form stretched across the heavens, her belly painted with stars, her horns cradling the golden orb of the sun. The Egyptians saw her as the great nurturer, the one who gave life to the sun each day, allowing it to be reborn every morning and to descend into the underworld each night. The world relied on Miheweret's strength, on her unwavering support, for without her, the sun would falter and life would cease to exist. Miheweret's role in the creation myth was one of profound significance. In the beginning, when the world was still a dark, chaotic sea, it was Miheweret who emerged from the primordial waters, bringing with her the light of the sun. She was there at the dawn of time, her great body lifting the sun from the depths and placing it in the sky, where it could shine down upon the earth. The ancient Egyptians believed that it was through Miheweret's gentle care that the world was brought into being, that the light of creation was nurtured and sustained by her love. Every day, as the sun rose in the east, the people of Egypt would look to the sky and see Miheweret's form, her soft, protective embrace guiding the sun on its journey. They knew that it was she who ensured that the sun would rise again, who protected it as it traveled through the dangers of the underworld each night. Her presence in the sky was a promise, a reassurance that life would continue, that the sun would return, that the world would remain in balance. The cow, as a symbol, held deep meaning in Egyptian religion and culture. It represented fertility, nourishment, and motherhood, all qualities that were embodied by Miheweret. In the lush fields along the Nile, where cattle grazed and provided for the people, the cow was a source of life, just as Miheweret was a source of life for the cosmos. Her nurturing nature was reflected in the everyday lives of the Egyptians, who saw in her the embodiment of the maternal care that sustained their world. But Miheweret was more than just a nurturing figure, she was also a goddess of immense power. To carry the sun, to bear the weight of the heavens, required a strength that was beyond human understanding. She was a force of nature, her power evident in the way the sun never faltered, never failed to rise. The Egyptians respected this power, knowing that Miheweret's strength was what held the world together, what kept the forces of chaos at bay. In the temples of Egypt, Miheweret was honored with reverence and love. Her image was often depicted on the ceilings, her starry body arching over the scenes of daily life, a constant reminder of her presence. She was shown with the sun disk nestled between her horns, a symbol of her role as the protector and mother of the sun. The people would offer prayers to her, asking for her continued protection, for her nurturing care, for the strength to face the challenges of life. Mihewurt's story is one of love, of creation, of the delicate balance that sustains life. She is a goddess who embodies the duality of nature, the gentle, nurturing care of a mother, and the immense, unyielding power of the sky. Her myth reminds us that the world is a fragile place, held together by forces that we cannot see, but that are as real as the sun's warmth on our skin, as the stars that light up the night. Every morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the Egyptians would give thanks to Mihewurt, knowing that it was through her that the day was born, that life could continue. And every night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they would trust that she would guide it safely through the underworld, bringing it back to life the next day. Mihewurt's role in their lives was as constant as the sun itself, a source of comfort, of stability, of the assurance that life would go on. In the quiet moments of the night, when the world was still and the stars began to emerge, Mihewurt's presence could be felt most strongly. Her form, stretching across the sky, was a reminder of the interconnectedness of all things, of the way that life, death, and rebirth were all part of the same cycle. She was there, watching over the world, her eyes filled with the light of the stars, her heart filled with the love that sustained the universe. The story of Mihewurt is one that speaks to the very heart of what it means to be alive. It is a story of creation, of nurturing, of the delicate balance that allows life to flourish. It is a story that reminds us that we are all connected, that we are all part of a greater whole, that the forces that sustain us are as vast and powerful as the sky itself. Through Mihewurt, the ancient Egyptians found a connection to the divine that was as nurturing as it was awe-inspiring, a reminder that life, in all its forms, is a gift, a miracle that must be cherished and protected. In the golden fields of ancient Egypt, where the earth met the sky in an endless horizon, there lived a god who was as essential to life as the air itself. His name was Nippur, the god of grain, and to the people of Egypt, he was the embodiment of sustenance, the very essence of life that grew from the fertile soil along the Nile. Nippur was not just a god, he was the life that sprouted from the earth, the green shoots that promised abundance, the golden ears of wheat that sustained a civilization. In a land where the annual flooding of the Nile dictated the rhythm of life, Nippur's significance was profound. The Egyptians knew that without grain, there could be no life. Bread was the staple of their diet, the foundation upon which their society was built. And Nippur, as the god of grain, was the one who ensured that the land remained fertile, that the harvests were plentiful, that the people were fed. His presence was felt in every seed that was sown, and every stalk that grew tall, and every loaf of bread that was baked. Nippur's role in ensuring the fertility of the land was one of sacred importance. The Egyptians believed that the earth was a living being, and that Nippur was the life force within it, the spirit that brought forth the harvest. They saw him in the rich, dark soil that was left behind after the Nile's waters receded, and the green fields that stretched out as far as the eye could see. Nippur was there in the warmth of the sun, in the cool breeze that rustled through the crops, and the gentle rains that nourished the land. As the god of grain, Nippur was also intimately connected to the cycle of life and death. The Egyptians understood that life was a cycle, that just as the grain sprouted from the earth, grew tall, and was harvested, so too did all living things. Nippur represented this eternal cycle, the unending rhythm of life, death, and rebirth. The grain that was harvested in the fields was not just food, it was a symbol of life itself, of the way that life continued, even in death. When the harvest was gathered, the people of Egypt gave thanks to Nippur, knowing that it was through his blessing that the land had yielded its bounty. They would take the first sheaves of grain and offer them to him, placing them in temples, burning them in sacred fires, ensuring that the God who had given them life was honored. Nippur's presence was felt in these rituals, his spirit in the smoke that rose to the heavens, and the prayers that were whispered in the quiet of the night. But Nippur's connection to the cycle of life and death went beyond the harvest. He was also present in the afterlife, where the souls of the dead were thought to be nourished by the grain he provided. The Egyptians believed that just as the grain was buried in the earth and then sprouted to new life, so too did the souls of the dead. Nippur was there, guiding them through the darkness, ensuring that they would be reborn, that they would find new life in the fields of the afterlife. In this way, Nippur was not just a god of the living, but also a god of the dead, a god who ensured that the cycle of life continued even in death. The Egyptians would bury their dead with offerings of grain, knowing that it was through Nippur that they would be sustained in the afterlife, that they would find new life in the fields of the beyond. Nippur's presence was a comfort, a reassurance that death was not the end, but merely a part of the cycle, a transition to a new beginning. The symbolism of grain in Egyptian culture was deeply tied to Nippur's role as the god of agriculture. Grain represented life, fertility, abundance, and the promise of a future. It was through Nippur that these promises were fulfilled, that the land remained fertile, that the people were nourished. In the fields of Egypt, where the grain grew tall and golden, Nippur's presence was felt in every stalk, and every ear of wheat, and every grain of barley. To the people of Egypt, Nippur was not just a distant god, but a constant presence in their lives. He was there in the fields as they worked, and the bread they ate, and the beer they drank. He was the life force that sustained them, the spirit that ensured their survival. In a land where the success of the harvest meant the difference between life and death, Nippur was the one they turned to, the one they trusted, the one they thanked. Nippur's influence extended beyond the fields and into the very fabric of Egyptian society. The temples dedicated to him were places of worship, where the people would come to give thanks, to offer prayers, to seek his blessing. The priests who served in these temples knew that to honor Nippur was to honor life itself, to ensure that the cycle of life and death continued, that the land remained fertile, that the people were nourished. In the quiet moments of reflection, when the fields were still and the sun dipped below the horizon, the people of Egypt would feel Nippur's presence most strongly. They would look out over the fields of grain, golden in the fading light, and know that it was through Nippur's blessing that their lives were sustained. They would feel a deep connection to the earth, to the cycle of life, to the God who ensured that the land remained fertile, that the harvests were plentiful, that they would continue to live. Nippur's story is one of sustenance, of life, of the unending cycle that connects all living things. He is the God who ensures that the earth remains fertile, that the grain grows tall, that life continues even in death. His presence is felt in every seed that is sown, and every stalk that grows, and every loaf of bread that is baked. Through Nippur, the people of Egypt found a connection to the earth, to the cycle of life, to the promise of a future. He was the life that grew from the earth, the spirit that sustained a civilization, the God who ensured that the cycle of life and death continued, unbroken, for all eternity. In the dim light of a small, humble home in ancient Egypt, a mother-to-be whispered prayers to a goddess who was both fierce and loving. Her hands rested gently on her swollen belly, feeling the new life stirring within. She knew that as the day of birth approached, she would need protection and strength. And so, she called upon Tauret, the hippopotamus goddess of motherhood, who stood as the guardian of all pregnant women and their unborn children. Tauret was no ordinary goddess. With the body of a hippopotamus, the limbs of a lion, and the tail of a crocodile, she was a formidable figure. Yet, her fearsome appearance was not meant to frighten, but to ward off evil and danger from those she protected. For the women of Egypt, Tauret was a symbol of hope, comfort, and safety in one of the most vulnerable times of their lives. In a land where childbirth was fraught with danger, where the line between life and death was thin, Tauret's role was essential. She was the one who stood watch over the mothers, who guarded the doorways, who kept the spirits of harm at bay. Her presence was a shield, a promise that the child would be born safely, that the mother would survive. Tauret's fierce form was a reminder that she would fight for them, that she would not let anything threaten the life that was so precious. The people of Egypt held the hippopotamus in both awe and fear. These massive creatures, with their powerful jaws and unpredictable nature, were among the most dangerous animals in the Nile. Yet, it was precisely this strength and ferocity that made Tauret the perfect protector. Just as a mother hippopotamus would fiercely guard her young, Tauret watched over the women and children with unwavering vigilance. Her benevolence was not gentle or soft, it was fierce, determined, and unyielding. The symbolism of the hippopotamus in ancient Egypt was complex. On one hand, it represented chaos and destruction, as these animals could easily overturn boats and attack those who ventured too close to the water's edge. On the other hand, the hippopotamus was also seen as a nurturing, protective figure, particularly when it came to their young. Taweret embodied this dual nature, using her strength and ferocity to protect the most vulnerable. Tawaret's depiction often included a swollen belly, emphasizing her connection to pregnancy and childbirth. She was sometimes shown holding the SA, a hieroglyphic symbol of protection, or a knife, ready to defend against any threats. In the dark of night, when fears and worries crept in, women would keep amulets of Taweret close by, believing that her presence would keep them safe. These amulets, often shaped like the goddess herself, were not just charms, but sacred tokens of her protective power. As the protector of pregnant women and children, Tawaret's influence extended beyond the home and into the broader fabric of Egyptian society. She was a comforting presence in the temples, where her statues stood as a testament to her strength and love. Pregnant women would visit these temples, offering prayers and gifts, seeking Tawaret's blessing for a safe delivery. Her image was carved into the walls, her fierce eyes watching over all who sought her protection. But Tawaret's role was not limited to the physical act of childbirth. She was also a guardian of new life, a protector of the young as they grew. In the early years of a child's life, when illness and danger were constant threats, Tawaret's presence was a source of reassurance. She was there in the first breath of a newborn, in the tentative steps of a toddler, in the laughter and cries of a young child. Her protection was a blanket of safety that covered every aspect of a child's early life. The love Tawaret showed was one of the fiercest kinds, a love that would stop at nothing to protect. It was the love of a mother who would face any danger, endure any hardship, to keep her child safe. And it was this same love that the women of Egypt felt from Tawaret, a love that gave them strength, that calmed their fears, that made them believe they could bring new life into the world. Even in death, Tawaret's protection did not wane. The Egyptians believed that the journey to the afterlife was fraught with dangers, and so, Tawaret's role continued as a guide and protector. She was there to ensure that the spirits of mothers and children found their way safely, that they were not lost in the darkness, that they found peace in the afterlife. In this way, Tawaret's influence extended beyond the earthly life, reaching into the spiritual, where a protective embrace was still felt. Tawaret's story is one of strength and love, of a goddess who was both fierce and kind, who protected those who were most vulnerable. She was the guardian of life itself, watching over the mothers and children with a vigilance that never wavered. In her, the women of Egypt found a protector who understood their fears, who shared their hopes, who stood by them in their most difficult moments. In the stillness of the night, when the world was quiet and the only sound was the gentle rustling of the Nile, the women of Egypt would whisper their prayers to Tawaret. They would feel her presence, strong and comforting, and know that they were not alone. Tawaret was with them, guiding them, protecting them, loving them. She was the fierce guardian of motherhood, the benevolent protector of life, the goddess who ensured that every child was born into a world where they were safe, where they were loved. In the shadows of ancient Egypt, where justice was not just a concept but a force, there existed a goddess whose name struck fear into the hearts of wrongdoers. Her name was Mafde, and she was the embodiment of swiftness, vengeance, and protection. Mafde was no gentle deity, she was fierce and relentless, a guardian of justice who delivered it with the precision and speed of a hunting cat. Mafde was often depicted as a feline, sleek and powerful, with the grace of a predator. In her form, the Egyptians saw the qualities they revered: swiftness, sharpness, and the ability to strike down those who threatened the balance of their world. Her presence was a warning to those who dared to bring chaos or harm to the kingdom. Just as a cat hunts its prey with silent determination, Mafde pursued justice with unyielding resolve. The Egyptians believed that Mafde's role was to protect the pharaoh and the kingdom from the forces of evil. She was the one who stood between the pharaoh and those who would seek to harm him, guarding the throne with the vigilance of a watchful feline. Her eyes, sharp and unblinking, saw all that moved in the shadows, and her claws were always ready to strike down those who defied the laws of the land. In the dark corridors of the royal palace, where plots and schemes were whispered in secret, Mafde was ever present. She was the unseen protector, the force that ensured that justice was served, no matter how hidden the crime. Those who conspired against the pharaoh knew that they would not escape her gaze, that her swift justice would find them, no matter where they hid. Mafde's justice was not just about punishment, it was about restoring balance, ensuring that the rightful order was maintained. Mafde's influence extended beyond the physical realm. She was also seen as a protector against the venomous creatures that threatened the lives of the people, particularly the dangerous snakes and scorpions that lurked in the deserts and shadows. The Egyptians saw these creatures as embodiments of chaos, their venom as a symbol of the harm that could spread through the kingdom. Mafde, with her sharp claws and fierce nature, was believed to be the one who could vanquish these threats, tearing through their evil with the swiftness of a predator. In her, the people of Egypt found a protector who was both fierce and just. She was a goddess who did not hesitate to act, who did not turn away from the difficult task of delivering justice. Mafde was the force that kept the darkness at bay, the sharp blade that cut through the lies and deceit that threatened to corrupt the kingdom. The pharaohs of Egypt, who were seen as the living embodiments of the gods, relied on Mafde's protection. They knew that their rule was not just about power but about maintaining the divine order. Mafde was their ally in this sacred duty, the one who ensured that their reign was just and that their enemies were swiftly dealt with. In times of turmoil, when the throne was threatened, Mafde's presence was a reassurance that justice would prevail, that the kingdom would not fall into chaos. Mafde's story is one of strength, protection, and the relentless pursuit of justice. She was not a goddess who waited for things to go wrong. She was proactive, always on the hunt for those who would disturb the peace. Her justice was swift and certain, a reminder that the laws of the gods and the kingdom were not to be broken. In her, the Egyptians saw the embodiment of the justice they sought in their own lives, a justice that was fair, unwavering, and protective of the innocent. Even in the afterlife, Mafde's role did not diminish. The Egyptians believed that she continued to protect the souls of the righteous, ensuring that they were not harmed by the forces of evil that lingered in the shadows of the underworld. Her claws, which had struck down the enemies of the pharaoh in life, continued to guard the souls of the dead, ensuring that they reached their final resting place without fear. In the temples dedicated to Mafde, her image was one of both beauty and ferocity. The priests who served her understood the importance of her role in the kingdom, and they honored her with rituals that acknowledged her swift justice and protective nature. The people who came to these temples offered prayers for justice in their own lives, seeking Mafde's intervention in disputes and wrongs that needed to be righted. They knew that Mafde's justice was not just about punishment, but about restoring balance, ensuring that the truth was upheld. Mafde's legacy is one of fierce protection and unwavering justice. She was the guardian of the pharaoh, the protector of the kingdom, and the goddess who ensured that justice was always served. Her story is a reminder that justice is not just about the law, but about the protection of the innocent, the swift punishment of the guilty, and the maintenance of the divine order. In the eyes of the Egyptians, Mafde was not just a goddess, she was the embodiment of the justice that held their world together. In the quiet whispers of time, hidden among the grand tales of Ra, Osiris, and Isis, there exist gods and goddesses whose names have almost faded into oblivion. Yet, these deities, though lesser known, hold within them the essence of what it meant to live, to hope, and to believe in ancient Egypt. They were the protectors of the everyday, the unseen forces that shaped the lives of the people, and their stories still echo through the ages, waiting to be heard. These gods were not forgotten because they were unimportant. Rather, they were the unsung heroes of a civilization that valued every aspect of life, from the cycles of the seasons to the safety of the soul in the afterlife. Their stories may not have been as grand as those of the sun god Ra or the lord of the underworld Osiris, but they were just as vital, just as woven into the fabric of daily existence. The god of grain, Nippur, was not just a figure in the background, he was the embodiment of life sustenance, the one who ensured that the fields would yield their harvest and that the people would have enough to eat. Without him, the bounty of the Nile, the very heartbeat of Egypt, would have been meaningless. Dnieper's connection to the land and the cycle of life and death is a reminder that the smallest, most seemingly insignificant forces are often the ones that keep everything in balance. Tauret, the hippopotamus goddess of motherhood, with her fierce yet nurturing presence, stood as a guardian at the most vulnerable moments of life. She was there when new life entered the world, her image offering comfort to those who feared the unknown. In a land where childbirth was fraught with danger, Tauret was the protector who ensured that both mother and child would survive. Her strength was in her ability to be both fierce and gentle, a duality that mirrored the complexities of life itself. Then there was Mafde, the swift, feline goddess of justice. Her sharp claws and unwavering gaze were symbols of the justice that every person, no matter how high or low, deserved. In a world where the pharaoh was the living god on earth, Mafde was the force that ensured his reign was just, that the wicked were punished, and that order was maintained. Her presence was a comfort to those who sought protection and a warning to those who dared to disrupt the balance. The celestial cow, Meheweret, was not just a figure in the sky, she was the very embodiment of creation and rebirth. Every day, as the sun rose, it was she who carried it on her back, ensuring that light and life would continue. Her story reminds us that the cycle of day and night, of life and death, is eternal, and that even the simplest things, like the rising of the sun, are filled with divine significance. Seshet, the goddess of writing and wisdom, was the keeper of knowledge, the one who recorded the deeds of gods and men alike. In a world where memory was everything, where the stories of the past were the guideposts for the future, Seshet was the guardian of that memory. Her quill and scroll were not just tools, but sacred objects that held the power to shape the future. And there was Serket, the scorpion goddess, who guarded the dead as they journeyed to the afterlife. She was the one who ensured that the soul would be protected from the venom of chaos, that it would reach the safety of the afterlife unscathed. Her role was a reminder that even in death, there was care, there was protection, and there was a guide to the next life. As these deities, once veiled in the shadows of history, are brought to light, we begin to see the fuller picture of ancient Egypt, a picture where every aspect of life was touched by the divine, where every person, no matter their status, was under the watchful eye of gods and goddesses who cared for them. Their stories, though not as widely told, are no less important. They are the stories of the people, of the everyday struggles, hopes, and dreams that made up the life of an Egyptian. The legacy of these forgotten gods is not just in the temples that may have once stood in their honor, or in the prayers whispered in their names, but in the way they shaped the very essence of Egyptian culture. They were the deities of the people, the ones who made life possible, who ensured that the sun would rise, that the fields would be fertile, that children would be born safely, and that justice would prevail. In today's world, where the grand narratives often overshadow the smaller, more intimate stories, these gods remind us that every life, every moment, has its place in the grand tapestry of existence. They remind us that even in the vastness of the cosmos, there is room for the small, the forgotten, the overlooked. And in rediscovering them, we reconnect with a part of our shared human heritage, a heritage that tells us that no matter how much time has passed, the gods who once watched over Egypt still have lessons to teach us, still have stories to tell. Their names may not be as well known as Ra or Osiris, but their influence, their presence, is still felt in the echoes of history. They are the silent guardians, the protectors of the everyday, and their stories are as enduring as the sands of Egypt itself. In remembering them, we honor not just the gods, but the people who lived under their care, who believed in their power, and who, through their faith, ensured that these deities would never be truly forgotten.